It's me, Adam H. Marby, and I thought today I would take the opportunity to teach you all a little bit of Sansha. Sansha is a language that was created for the Suniya. So today I'm going to teach you a simple phrase. Salayam na sulayamin. That means peace and blessings. Hitayat anunin means upon you. So this is how the Sansha people greet each other. And sometimes they'll just say salayam.
All right, hi Adam.
Hello.
Hi, thanks for coming out.
Thanks for having me.
Tell me about your latest book, Songs of the Suniya. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, so Songs of the Suniya is actually the title of the series. Songs of the Suniya is a series of books, poems, and short stories about this fictional universe I've created called the Suniya. The first book coming out is Tales from the Sands of Time, Volume 1. And this is a collection of short stories from the lore and history of the Suniya universe.
Okay, and what's the Suniya universe?
So the Suniya universe is, imagine something similar to Middle-earth. So the idea is that it's a fictional land, completely cooked up in this crazy head of mine. And it has several different kingdoms, it has thousands of years of history, its own language, its own religion, its own mythology that goes along with that, as well as fantastic beasts and great battles and all the wonderful trappings of fantasy literature.
Okay, so this is an entirely fictional world. How many pages is this series? This first installment in the series.
So the first installment is just a selection of short stories to introduce people to the universe. So it contains 3 short stories about 3 major characters in the lore of the universe, and they're referenced often in the main storyline. So for example, one of the first stories is called The Ballad of Bagheer, which is based on a poem that is often recited in the universe. And it tells the story of the patriarch of the Panther clan and his adventures and essentially how he came to be known as the Panther. I don't want to give away too much of that story. Another one of the stories called The Great Divide is based on the poem The Great Divide, which tells the story of how the 3 major tribes in the Suniya universe split off after, sort of to give you the basic idea, the people all lived together in this one area. They're called the Sansha people, which in their language means the people. And they lived a very peaceful life. They referred to it as the peace, and the time that they lived in was referred to as the age of innocence, or the innocent age. And there were these 2 brothers, Iska and Imsaid. They were twins, and they were in love with the same woman, Yahuya. Now, Yahuya was in love with Imsaid, one of the twin brothers. And essentially the other brother got jealous and appealed to a dark magic to convince her to fall in love with him. The stipulation was that if he made love to her before he married her, the spell would be broken. The spell broke, the other brother found out, and the situation got ugly. One of the brothers ended up murdering the other, and because they'd never had a murder before, there was a great argument among the elders of the tribe, or the village, in order to determine what to do with him. One of them said execute him, another one said exile, another one said forgive him, and without giving away too much of the plot, something terrible happens through the course of that argument, and the entire village just says, you know what, we're all splitting off. So they split off under the 3 different patriarchs, Patriarch Rahi, Rahmi, and Jahi, who fathered the 3 tribes, the Rahmanin, the Rahishin, and the Jahisha. And they all basically just went off into their own areas, established their own kingdoms. First it was city-states, then kingdoms, then empires, and that's where we find the main storyline, which is the state that the world is in almost 20,000 years later.
Wow, that was very detailed, very complex story. What inspires you? What inspired you to write such a complex tale?
What inspired me was my love of epic literature. I love epics. I love grand stories about heroes and monsters and great castles and all of this. And I grew up on these stories. So, I used to read stories like the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, the Beowulf, and Robin Hood, and King Arthur, and reading on all of these great stories. That's sort of what I love, and I used to write poems about epic battles. I have something that I call the Adwa trilogy, which tells the story of the experience of the Battle of Adwa between three different people, husband and wife, and the wife's brother. And I thought, what? Why not write my own? And I've been working on this since I was a teenager. I wrote the first manuscript, 65 pages, when I was bored one summer. And I'm not going to lie, it was awful. It was terrible. But the elements of the universe were there. And it just took me a long time to mature as a writer, to learn more, and to develop my skill to actually write it the way that I wanted to write it. And I had to do a lot of research as well. And so all of that came together to produce this.
So you said it's a series.
Yeah.
So how many stories are within the series?
To be honest, I don't even know how many stories are in the series because I have written so much background.
Yeah.
So, I mean, every piece of the map that tells a story has its own story within the universe. Within the major storyline, it will be a series of 3 books. But in terms of telling the history and lore, because there was so much of it, I could honestly write this until the end of my life.
Okay, so who is this story intended for? If you could pick the perfect reader, and you're pitching to them right now, and you're telling them, read this story because X, Y, and Z, what would be the reason for someone to pick up a book like this? Because it sounds like a commitment.
Well, what I would say is, to my ideal reader, that would be somebody who loves things like Lord of the Rings, because I'm a Lord of the Rings geek. I'm a Star Wars geek. I'm a Star Trek geek. I practically live inside of Game of Thrones. And so it would be somebody who loves to hear stories about the human experience in a fantastical setting. And one of the things that I tried to focus on was telling a human story within a fantastic setting. And so if we want to hear about, one of my characters in the short stories that I've written, he struggles with PTSD after witnessing some terrible things happen to his family during a raid by their enemies. Another one is a strong female character who's basically, her entire story is her bent on revenge for basically restoring the honor of her family. In the main storyline, I have characters that struggle with everything from drug addiction to being forced into unloving marriages, to having to make the decision about relatives that are essentially vegetables, and trying to decide what to do with them within a situation where you have rival kings who are trying to take your land, or you have insurrection from uppity nobles, and you have unrest because the people are starving, and you're trying to figure out what to do about dealing with their own life issues while also tackling these great problems.
Well, how much of your life, when I think of an epic story, I think of an old man who has been writing his entire life and who is weaving, some of his life experience into the story. I look at you, you're not old enough. So then it makes me wonder how much of life have you experienced and how much of it finds itself in the book, or is it all out of your imagination?
It's a mixture of things.
Yes.
I find that a lot of the different characters in the story are little pieces of myself, little pieces of my personality that I throw into these experiences. And I've also read a lot of history, and a lot of what happens in the book is inspired by some of the great stories I've read in history, or some of the ways that people used to, communicate and handle each other. There's a lot of things, ceremony. Religion is also a very big source for me as well. I grew up a Christian and reading a lot of the epics in the Old Testament, which, if you look at them as stories, to subtract the religious element out of it and just look at these as stories, they are fantastic. You hear these people who are just people thrust into these great experiences where they now have to find a new home for how many thousand people, or they are forced to make terrible sacrifices in order to preserve their honor or the honor of their families, or they're thrust into facing these immeasurable odds that you would think, based on where they're from, you wouldn't expect them to survive, but they do, and they overcome. And they become something greater than their birth station would allow.
So, say it with me. Salayam na Suryanin Fitayat Anunin. Cheers.
What inspired you?
I'm a lover of epics.
Yes.
I grew up reading epics like Beowulf, the Ramayana, or the Ramayana, as some people pronounce it, the Mahabharata, different stories about the generous Hatim and Layla, who rode whirlwinds through the desert.
Sorry. My phone.
Shmoli dance.
I just didn't even think of my phone.
Yeah.
That is terrible.
I